Great, thanks. Well, I'm Jen Dalton. I'm here from Kitchen Table Consulting. I'm one of your facilitators for this community of practice. You're at our monthly Farm to Food Assistance community of practice Zoom. We are here to build relationships and address technical assistance needs as you build out your farm to food assistance work across the country. Before we get rolling today, I'd really like to go over our community agreements for this community of practice. Would you please share? We've got those up there. Great. So, okay, so I'm just going to remind everyone that the community agreements express how we share the space together. I'm going to give you a moment to read them, but I'm also going to read them out loud. I'd really love for you all to just kind of take a moment to be here and absorb what our community agreements are. So we honor and celebrate our collective wisdom. Together, we know a lot. We are mindful of our power, our privilege, and how much space we take up. We take responsibility for impact, regardless of our intent. We give grace to one another and approach conflict with curiosity. We challenge assumptions, respect our differences, and speak from our own experiences. We honor confidentiality, lessons leave, stories stay. We take care of our own physical, mental, and emotional needs, and we meet each other where we are. Showing up is enough, and listening is participating. I want you all to just be aware that today we are definitely going to be talking about racial equity through the experiences of many of our presenters. So if you feel activated, defensive, or something uncomfortable, arises within your body by things that get shared, we just want to encourage you to get curious about that and maybe lean in harder into your listening and notice what stories that brings up for yourself, emotions, etc. So just, take a minute to just kind of take that in. A little bit of housekeeping. We are going to be going into breakout rooms today. If you're ever in a breakout where you feel uncomfortable or it's just not your vibe or no one is there, as we know, a lot of you are here just to listen, just come on back to the main room and we can reassign you, or we can have that discussion in the main room. As I mentioned, we know a lot of you are here maybe driving or just to listen or to take in the recording, but if you could please turn on your cameras, we would really appreciate that. We're here to build community, and seeing your face really helps with that, but of course it's really up to you. We love using the chat to engage in conversation, sharing our thoughts on what the speakers are saying, or just to connect with one another, as Jacob was showing how he likes to do that in the chat. Thanks, Jacob. But just feel free to use it. We will call out any questions for you and help engage with that. And this call, as you know, is being recorded and will be made available and emailed to everyone who registered. And as many of you may have seen, there is a discussion board available for you always on the Food Systems Leadership Network website. Andrew or Miles, could one of you please share that in the chat, the link? There's a resource library on there and a bunch of other stuff. And we know a lot of folks have been actively engaged in a conversation about pricing lately, which is really great, super helpful for loads of people. All right, so I'm just going to go over our agenda for today and our objectives. Could you go to the next slide for that, please? I think we've got it. Okay. So as always, we're here to connect and learn from one another and address technical assistance needs. But today, we're going to learn a lot from the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab participants. You're going to find out what the Learning Lab is, who these people are. They've been meeting for over a year and have some models and frameworks to share with us, and we're going to have a conversation about that. And again, note, we're going to be highlighting racial equity. It's going to be a big part of what we have a conversation about today, both in the presentations and in the discussion groups. So it's really important that we collectively uphold the cultural agreements today. And just to reemphasize, if you're ever uncomfortable in a breakout, you can always come back to the main room. So first, we're going to hear from Susan and Andrew at the Wallace Center and learn a little bit more about the Learning Lab. And then we're going to have brief presentations from two of the Learning Lab participants and learn about how the lab has impacted their work. Following their presentations, we're going to get into breakouts. Each of the breakout rooms are going to be facilitated by Learning Lab members who are going to first share their own insights about this work, and then solicit responses and thoughts from you about how you're approaching it in your the topic, essentially, in your work. And then we're going to come back into the main space and have a group harvest and discussion. So again, we hope that the community practice today provides more insight into your own framework of how you approach and operationalize equity-centered, community-driven processes and thought models in your own work. And with that, I'd like to introduce Susan Schempf and Andrew Carberry from the Wallace Center, and they're going to share with us about the Learning Lab and what they've been up to for a little over a year. Susan and Andrew, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Jen. And hey, everybody. Just one request. I think a lot of us are only working on one screen today. So if somebody could make sure and monitor the who's in the waiting room, I was just trying to check on that. Thank you. So as Jen said, I'm Susan. I'm the co-director of the Wallace Center. I'm calling in today from Pere Marquette State Park in Illinois, where myself and Andrew and the rest of our Wallace Center team are here for a team retreat this week, just planning and strategizing for the rest of the year. It's been really awesome to be together as a team. And I know, see some people nodding. It's just so valuable when you're able to actually get together in person because we're an all remote team. So I'm feeling really energized by that today, and also just really excited to share back what we've been up to in this last year or so through the Farm to Food Assistance Learning Lab. So great to see your faces. Thanks everybody for being on video. It's nice to see people's faces and connect in this way. I'm just going to provide just a little bit of background, and then I'm going to hand it over to two of the teams that participated in the Learning Lab to really talk about their work and shine a light on what they've been up to and what equity-centered, community-driven farm to food assistance means for them. And then, as Jen said, we'll go into some breakout rooms. So Miles, if you could pull the slides back up, just a quick reminder, like, how do we get here? And this might sound kind of true for many of you. You know, during the COVID pandemic, there was just a huge surge in community-based efforts to connect farmers that were losing their markets and had a lot of product that needed to get out to community. And at the same time, a big increase in food insecurity and folks that were facing hunger, and a lot of new efforts that were like, how do we pull these things together? How can we link up folks that are really supporting farmers around farm viability and finding markets and being able to sell and get fresh, healthy product to community? How do we link those into food banks and food pantries and others that are purchasing food? And how do you really do that in a way that centers dignity and justice throughout the process? And so that really opened up a new area of work for the Wallace Center in supporting our networks in finding innovations and solutions and strategies to solve for this challenge. And so we initially stood up some research around the Farmers to Families Food Box program, because there was also some new funding resources available to support this farm to food assistance work. As we were kind of coming out of that era of Farmers to Families Food Box, and then the local food purchase assistance program was announced, there seemed to be a real need within our networks, and we were hearing requests for support and convening and connection around this. So we were able to marshal some resources through a local food promotion program grant, as well as some support from the Rockefeller Foundation, to stand up a research effort, capacity building effort, and this very community of practice. So this community of practice has been funded through that LFPP grant. As part of that LFPP, we've been doing a lot of research to learn more about the field of farm to food assistance. What is this? What is this market? What is the opportunity for producers? What are some of the challenges and opportunities that this specific strategy in our broader array of food systems transformation strategies, like, what do we need to learn here to get better at this work? So it's a quick overview of the Learning Lab, which is like one of the pillars of this broader strategy to build the field of farm to food assistance. There's kind of two parallel objectives of this lab. One, it was to gain a deeper understanding of farm to food assistance programs. And through a cohort approach of connecting and partnering with folks, practitioners on the ground that are leading farm to food assistance efforts. How might we co-produce knowledge about the field? So the Learning Lab, through a series of about 10 cohort calls over the last year, have dug in on different topics like key factors of success. What are the challenges? How do we sustain this work? What does it mean to be equity centered in farm to food assistance work? How do we deal with power? We've done a lot of like deep dives on these different aspects of farm to food assistance. And that's about like collecting that information so that we can then share that back out to the broader field of practice and the broader community of practice. The second, very like in parallel objective was strengthening that work and supporting that work on the ground. So each of the teams that participated in the lab received $20,000 flexible funding to use how they wanted to use to support their own work. They had support from 4 amazing advisors that we've been working with throughout the last year and a half around this program. Myra is here, and Aaron and Allison and Paku are amazing advisors that have been partnering with us on this program. And then also these like monthly cohort calls where we're getting together and then really learning from each other. So just a quick, highlight of the 10 teams that we've been working with, really spanning coast to coast. It's an incredible and diverse group of people. I'm just going to give everybody a shout out. We have the Arizona Community Hub with Dion Washington as the lead over in Washington, in Arizona. Metro Caring in Denver, and that's Emily Sedolkowski. She's here leading that team. Sustainable Molokai in Hawaii, and that's Jamie Ronzello. The OKC Food Hub with Ton Tran, and Ton's here with us today in Oklahoma City. El Departamento de la Comida in Puerto Rico, and that is Julie Mercado, who's been leading that team. Healthy Food for All in New York, and that's LaShondra Mix. The Northwest Tribal Emergency Management Council in Washington State, and that's Linda Zambrano leading that team. Mandela Partners in California with Nina Arancina, and Transplanting Traditions Community Farm in North Carolina, and that's Riri Way. She's going to be speaking with us in just a second. And last but not least, also speaking with us today is Taylor Ryan from Change Today, Change Tomorrow in Kentucky. So just an incredible group of people. And this is what we've been doing together. So in September, we had a kickoff call. We really got to know each other. We had monthly 2-hour cohort calls. There we go, Miles. In October, we were really kicking off and trying to develop a shared sense and a shared analysis of the farm to food assistance system, which we'll be showing you an output of that process in a minute. We had an in-person retreat in late October in Phoenix, Arizona. Shout out to our former colleague, Melanie Edwards, who was really instrumental in pulling that together for us. And then throughout the last, 6-7 months, we've had monthly cohort calls where we've been connecting, learning about the work together, really like kind of going deeper and deeper into understanding what it means to be equity centered and community driven in our farm to food assistance work. And throughout that time, the teams have had access to the advisor support, and they've also been contributing to the broader research effort in through surveys and interviews with our research partners. So just a couple more slides here, and then I'm going to turn it over. These are some pictures from our retreat. It was so fun to be together, and it's so important to be together as a cohort that is so diverse and coming from so many different places, for us to get together and really get to know each other and build trust and a sense of solidarity and community. It really built the foundation for us to be able to do really good work together over the following months, and to be able to have like some of the hard and challenging conversations that we have. It was essential for us to get together in that way. So that was really fun to be together. And then just to kind of like step out a little bit and say, what is this research all about? What our guiding questions for the lab are here. And what we wanted to do was, through these teams, in partnership with these teams, learn about the different models that are at play. Each team that's a part of this cohort has a very different approach to farm to food assistance. it doesn't just mean food banks buying from farmers. There's a lot more going on, as you all know. And so it's been really awesome to learn about the different approaches underway and to like try to distill that too. Like, what are some of the essential components? And also, what are the economics around this? What are the price points that farmers are getting? And how do we do this work in a way that's actually transformative, that it's not just a transaction, but that it's moving towards a new kind of food system, a new kind of food economy. We were also really serious about the challenges. And as I'm sure many of y'all are aware, with funding being one of the top challenges, how do we actually afford to buy food at a higher price point when what you're trying to do is get healthy food out to community members in need? So definitely dug into that, as well as some of the oppressive systems at play. Really, both in partnership with the lab and you all in the community of practice and other partners, identifying like what are the recommendations for the field, for funders, for the USDA, in policy changes, in changes in practices that we need to take on so that we can enable this work. And that kind of gets to the last bullet point here, is what are the enabling factors? Like, what really helps fuel and support this work, and helps us to move from charity to justice in our farm to food assistance work. So our first kind of dive into these questions was back in October. And what you're looking at right now is the output of that first cohort call, where we went to just like a great set of questions of like, what does it mean to be an equity-centered, community-driven farm to food assistance program? Who is at the table? What are the impacts? How do we go about this? And what is the vision that we're moving towards? And the graphic illustration that you're seeing was produced by our partners over at Illustrating Progress. They were listening to our conversation and they created this infographic. And it is such a beautiful representation of the rich conversations that we had within the Learning Lab. And I am going to actually pass the mic now over to Taylor. I think is going first. Nope, who's going first, y'all? Sorry.
Riri
I'm
is
gonna
gonna
go first. No,
Taylor's going to go first. Okay.
Yeah, she asked me to
Taylor's
go
going
first.
first?
I'm stepping in. I know we had a plan, but now we got another plan.
That's okay. I love changing up the plan. So I'm going to pass the mic to Taylor, who's over in Kentucky, to share more about like what that means when we're talking about equity centered and community driven. Like, what does that mean in your farm to food assistance work in Kentucky? So tell us a little bit about your work, who you are. You've got the floor, Taylor.
And I'm gonna pulling up your slideshow.
On assistance. I love that. Yes, support. Okay, good afternoon, y'all. My name is Taylor Ryan, she, her, and I am the executive director and founder of Change Today, Change Tomorrow. I'm calling in from Baltimore. That's how they say it. I am at the Refed Food Waste Solution Summit, so I'm super excited just to be calling in and actually like on the clock and in the clock. Okay, so yeah, I put a little slideshow together because I like Canva. I like graphics. My face is cute, but the graphics are cuter. Okay, so I'm just gonna recap a couple of my time at the learning lab, as well as talk about some of the things that we do at Change Today, Change Tomorrow. So you can go to the next slide. Yes. Okay. So at Change Today, Change Tomorrow, we are focused on eradicating the food justice and public health barriers that plague the Black community. We serve everybody, but we prioritize Black people because we are Black people. It's very food over here. And with that, we have 3 pillars. So we have food justice, public health, and community engagement. Our original pillars included food justice, public health, and education. But we don't really like the word education because we are not out here educating people. A lot of people already have the information. A lot of people already know this, already have the skills and the tools. They just need to be activated. So we changed that pillar from education to community engagement. And you can go to the next slide. Actually go back because I'm talking a little bit. So with a small staff of 6 people and 5 of them are part-time. I'm the only full-time. We do a lot with a little bit. And so I want to just highlight some of the things we do. We have a grocery gleaning program where we glean grocery surplus and we bring it from one side of the city to the other, where we provide a grocery shopping experience for Black families who do not have a grocery store in their neighborhood. We are a participant in the LFPA boxes, and they're actually going directly into our farmers markets right now. We give the LFPA boxes away at our farmers markets, and we also are aware of what's in our boxes, so they're not competing with any of the other farmers who are at our farmers markets selling other items. So they're a supplement to whatever they are providing. We're really big on information dissemination, and so we know a lot of information at the top. Big words and big jargon like annoy people, it intimidates people. And so what we do is we talk plainly, we speak plainly. So you would never know on this call that I had 2 master's degrees unless I told you. We also dabble in food as medicine. And so we're about to launch our Fresh RX program. It'll be a 12-week program with 15 expecting mothers where we are working with a dietitian and a farmer to curate food as medicine boxes specifically tailored to their pregnancy experience. And then we bought a lot in October. And so we have been doing some community feedback meetings and then hosting a community garden on our lives. So that's just some of the things we do, but we do so much, okay? You can go to the next slide. So what I have learned in my time in the Learning Lab is not necessarily something that I learned, but some things that have just been reinforced to me. And so like just simply having the understanding in the space that all of us are working hard and all of us deserve grace. I've been in other cohorts and, learning opportunities before, and I don't think I will ever, receive like that equity and that equality of like, yes, I see you, I hear you, and what can I do to support you? Versus like, everybody needs to have their video on and we're being, productive and we have to stick to this agenda. It's like, this is a curated safe space that I'm very happy to be able to, take your hair down, take your bra off, it's real comfortable, okay? So you can go to the next slide. But with that, it's been a reinforcement of like community and connection and care for me. Like, it's not like I'm in Kentucky. It's not a lot of people who are doing the things and who are excited about doing the things. It's not a lot of people who are not capitalists who are doing the things. And so it's just good to be in space. And that reinforcement of community and connection and care is just like a top priority in this space. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed being poured into and being able to pour and like be accepted and also like feel affirmed in this space. Oftentimes I'm navigating spaces in Louisville, Kentucky, where people make me feel stupid or people want to make me feel small. And I feel like this was a space where people like uplifted what I was doing and like really gave me the floor to speak. And I feel respected, whereas oftentimes I don't really feel respected as a Black woman in the work that I do in the state that I'm in. So yeah, we can go forward. I did not practice or time this, so you gotta let me know about the time. I be winging it. Okay, it's a cute presentation though. Okay, so these are our shared values. It's a lot of words on here, so I just want to let you all know that we uphold values of inclusivity and integrity, also accessibility. We stand up for the LGBTQ community, body positivity, reproductive justice, and gender affirming care. We believe that making public health education accessible and understandable, which is why we're really big on information dissemination. We also dabble in maternal health and caregiving health. We're Black centered. And so that allows us to move differently than other organizations move because we're Black poor people serving Black poor people. So we understand that you may need transportation to this event, or you may need childcare while you're at this event, or you may just need to be financially incentivized to be at this event because you got other stuff to do. And so we don't miss a lot of marks when it comes to serving people. That kind of gets me into my next slide. I know we're talking about equity centered and community driven, but I want to speak more about being community driven because I feel like that's our bread and butter, honestly, truly. Like, honey, I don't know anybody else in the city that's doing it like we are. And so I want to provide a couple examples of that and what that looks like for us. So on our lot, we bought a 5,000 square foot lot. The intention of that is to have a lot in every West End neighborhood. There are 9 West End neighborhoods among 60,000 Black residents. And so we bought our first one. It's in the California neighborhood. It's on the corner of 25th and Date Street. And before we have done anything on the lot, the first thing we did was canvass the neighborhood, let everybody know in the neighborhood that this is what we bought, and we are co-creating the space together. And so we host a monthly community feedback meeting that literally is prioritizing the voices of the people in the space, in the neighborhood, and also activating them to be leaders in that space. So don't just tell us what you want to see. Tell me what you want to be responsible for in this space. So, you know, Sunday, when 65-year-old Geraldine is coming down to teach 5-year-olds how to read, it's because she wants to. It's because she knows she's safe in this space because we own it. We've co-created that space together. We've also established a youth advisory council because a lot of our youth programming in the past has been grant-based. It's been like, oh, there's a grant. We want to do something. And that's not really intentional. We want to be focused on what the youth actually want. And so we're paying 15 youth leaders to tell us exactly what they want to see on the lot that we purchased, as well as just in youth programming altogether. And same with our farmers market. Our farmers market had a survey, 3 different surveys actually, that we distributed to the residents in a 3 to 5 block radius of our farmers market. And so our farmers market is carefully curated to the needs of the community. I also know that being a Black organization, and specifically a Black woman organization, we have higher expectations of what a farmer's market is to look like. I've been to other farmers markets, and our farmers markets have live performances. We have live DJ. We have a restroom on site. We have childcare on site. We have different things that are available to cater to the community's needs because that's what they identified that they wanted to see. And then Tribe Time is our caregiver and parent support group. It's a monthly gathering where it was literally created from our base of community baby shower attendees. And so we didn't create this going, we want to help parents. We created this with the intention of what do parents want? What do caregivers want? And so it's a cohort of 20 parents and caregivers that come together once a month, and we share resources. We have a swap meet of materials, and then we just have a different theme. So last month we talked about accountability and how you can apologize to your child, apologize to yourself, and apologize to your parents. You can go to the next slide. One of the really big takeaways I enjoyed from this experience was just the agency and the autonomy to be who I am in this space. I know, like, when we hopped on our call just to talk about, we were like getting real raw and real, like, yeah, we are real safe in this space. So as soon as we hop on a call, it's like, yeah, I'm talking my stuff. I'm saying what I want because I don't really have an opportunity to do that with people who are, you know, similar in the work in other spaces within, you know, local Kentucky. So I'm just excited to be able to represent this learning lab and also just be able to speak for just really having the agency to have my camera off and be with my kid and still be active in the space and be respected in a way of like, yes, we trust that you're doing what you're doing versus do all these things because it's so restricted. Like, the work is already hard. So just being trusted that you're doing the work, it means so much. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. And we have a call to action because I heard we could say whatever we wanted to at the end to get people engaged in our work. And so our call to action is we have a goal to have 1,000 monthly donors at least the $5 level. And so if anybody is intrigued or excited or just engaged about the work that I was talking about today, in order for us to spread that work, we need money. We don't get a lot of money because Black organizations only receive 1% of all the funding in the entire United States. So with that in mind, we believe in people power, and we put a lot of effort into building power within the people that we serve. We have over 100 monthly donors already, not at just the $5 rate. And so we're hoping to, you know, curate more of those. And if you want to learn more about Change Today, Change Tomorrow, you can follow us. We're on every platform you can think of: LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, all the things. What is the new Instagram, Threads? We're on all of it. So please follow us and then follow up with me, myself. I'll put my email in the chat. And I really don't know where I was on time, so I'm sorry, y'all.
You did great. That was just perfect, Taylor. Thank you so much. Always just bringing your truth. And it's so awesome to hear about your work there. And I hope that maybe one of these years we can host something in Kentucky and come see what you're up to in person.
Yes, I'm so excited. Please do.
I'd love that. I'm gonna ask Riri to come off mute and share a little bit about your work over in North Carolina. So
Thank you, Susan.
Riri from Transplant and Tradition, you got it.
And Riri, do you want me to share the infographic again, or you want me to wait on that?
I don't have anything to present.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just speaking. I have my notes, and I sound a little bit hoarse. Sorry about that, y'all. And thank you, Taylor, for going ahead and taking the baton in the beginning, because I am a little bit flustered and a little bit all over the place. And I think to echo off what Taylor says, that's what the Learning Lab is. There's a lot of like humanity and gracious and like care in the group. So, and I'll share more about like the impact and what it means to be in partnership with people. And it's funny, I'm finding this like on a national level. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much love and dedication and support than in my local community at times. So I'm Riri, I use she, hers. I'm the executive director for Transplanting Traditions Community Farm. I've been in this role, this is until almost like 3 years into my role now, but I've been involved with Transplanting Traditions since I was a little girl. When I was 13, I was working on the farm with my parents, and my sister and I and the former program coordinator, we founded the youth program to address a lot of like food justice work. And because my community, my ethnicity, we are refugees from Burma and on the border of Burma or Thailand, and many of y'all might know it as Myanmar. And when we immigrated to resettled to this country, food was a big factor to our resettlement process. Food, cultural significant food was in there, and the closest grocery store at the time when we moved here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, was out in Cary area or Greensboro and High Point. And so that's about like 45 to an hour drive. And since my community has been fairly new to the United States, there isn't like accessibility to like transportations or food. And how Transplant Edition was founded, it was just really my elders, so my parents and the elders were like, hey, we want to have access to land to grow our own food, because we can't find that here in our local grocery store. Food is expensive. We don't know how to eat or cook kale or collards or things that we would get from the food pantry in these food boxes, and those food would just end up going to waste. And so Transplant Edition was founded based on the elders' desires to be able to have access to a little bit of like space to address food sovereignty. And that's how we really formally was founded, and we continue to do that and have expanded to doing like different programs now. So now we are also like serving statewide a little bit too, continuing to serve the refugee and immigrant community from Burma, and also tapping onto like looking at new partnerships and new partner farmers across North Carolina, like the Latinx community, to provide similar support to them. Yeah, so why and how we really got involved with the Learning Lab is our work and intentionality around food sovereignty and food access, and to really making sure, as when we try to address food access, is that like not only should people have access to food, anyone can eat, but for then there are like sub different communities. Like if a community can't eat these food that they're getting from a local food pantry, that's costing that organization a ton of money to get that food, and then these food end up going to trash. We are trying to address in a way where like, one, people have the education, the autonomy, and we facilitate that through providing access to land. So by community, they know how to farm already. Here's a piece of land, you can grow your food, and you can grow whatever you want and eat whenever you want to eat. That is essentially that. And then we're like, what if like we do something bigger by addressing like being a partnership with local food pantry to help them to have this understanding and awareness around like equity in the food system, that just because you're providing food to people doesn't mean these food gets eaten. It's not a checkbox to do. So we started having conversation with them. We're like, when you are distributing food to these community, they're actually bringing it back to our staff and we don't need to eat them and your food is going to waste. How can we form a partnership where these food will get eaten? So what we end up doing is like start talking and collectively Transplanted Edition did a lot of fundraising in the beginning, buy produce from the farmers, and those money, we paid 100% of the price, and then donate that to the local food pantry, and then they do the distribution, and then those food gets distributed out to other refugee and immigrant community members who eat similar food like my community. And over time, we're like, okay, fundraising wise is getting hard. Can you like help us pay for that as well? And now, so one awesome organization is really helping us pay for 100% of it. So then the fundraising part for us gets, it alleviates some burden on us to do that fundraising. So we started to form that partnership, and they are also, as an organization, are thinking about how can we source from local food instead of like getting donation from Sam's or Walmart or these organizations. What is the impact of the dollar amounts? Even food will, the portion size will get smaller in our food pantry, but what is the bigger impact? So it's amazing to see the ripple effects of conversation when we try to centering around how to be equity centers and continue to emphasize on equity. And that's really where this space has come for me when being part of the Learning Lab is that Susan, Melanie, and Andrew and the Learning Lab facility, the Wallace Centers have helped us to continue to like say, yes, it's okay. Like name this, say it, repeat it. It doesn't matter, be unfiltered. And I've come to really love that because I am very unfiltered and my staff on this call will know I'm very unfiltered as well. And to be able to say things in a very authentic way that, no, we don't want your dollar amount because we don't want to be your poster children. And you don't really think about equity in the way we're thinking about equity. It's not culturally appropriate. It doesn't support refugee leadership. It doesn't support anything. Just because we have your money, it's great for us to meet our budget, but there's no impact. There's no system change work. And one of like my founding moment or things that like I have learned from the Learning Lab is the idea of like, not the idea, but like how to continue to emphasize the work that we're doing, like changing the narrative and continue to emphasize on the level of advocacy that we're doing. Continue to emphasizing that, and those people aren't your people, then they're not your people. They're not ready for this work. And the last thing is the community and like the sense of like vulnerability, and also the sense of like, let's support each other virtually. And how will this look like is when a good example is Dion came up with all these amazing ideas, and like she's like, oh yeah, I have this, let me send this to you. Oh, I've done this, let me share that with you. Like being open to like, okay, you can have a piece of like my past grant that we wrote that was successful, let me share that with you. And it's something of a core values that we have at Transplanted Edition. It's been really challenging, the practice of like, how do I do this? Like the sharing of resources and like understanding that we live in a world of abundance, but there's also a mind of like scarcity where it shouldn't be that way. So really changing not just the narrative, but changing our own personal mindset, that this cohort has really brought us together to be in collectiveness. And the last thing I just want to emphasize about Transplanted Edition is that as we continue to address food and making sure people have food, and like what are the different ways we are doing this, it's from youth doing advocacy works, going out to the farmers market and doing cookie demonstration, or like farmers are like, we're helping farmers bring in income in a really like fair price. And I have an amazing team who continue to say, yes, we need to be having restaurants to buying like full price rather than asking for the retail or like dollar amount wholesale price. We're like, that's not equitable. Or even to be able to provide education so that children who are born here in the United States now, whose parents still have a lot of like roots and ties to their identity, that what education, how can we make sure that like we are teaching children about their culture and what it means to be Korean or refugee American in the United States, and why is like food important to your culture, and how can we preserve that. And how we get to all of this is through how we design our programs is by doing a collective decision making from the community. They tell us, what do you want to do in your program? Like, we will review it, we will meet with them, we will have end of the year assessments and be like every single year checking with you what's working well, what isn't. And we would create something and do activities that reflection of their need. Not just someone's like, oh, there's this thing, like we should do this and that, but no, that is not equitable, and that's not how we really should be running our program. So program design is really coming from the community as well. Like Taylor's organization is very community based. And the beauty of this, and I'm like, I don't know how the Wallace Centers do it, but like bringing all of us to an organization that all of us are from the community with some lived experience, some not, but we have witnessed work in a ways where it's even harder to be BIPOC, especially women of color, and then multiple identity that we all have to be doing this work. We are organization that gets less than 1 or 2% of funding, and we have to prove our worth a lot at times. And the Wallace Centers has made us to be able to like, how can we bridge this work together and work in unison. Yeah, that's all I want to share about our experience, and I'll just drop our website if folks are interested. We are undergoing a website change, so by this fall we will have a live website, a new website, but yeah, that's all I have to share. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Riri. Just both Taylor, Riri, not only what you're doing and kind of the model you're sharing, but I think just for all of us on the community of practice, it's a reminder that not only when we get together in communities with our colleagues and our community, a lot of rich, deep conversations and learning can happen. So one, the Learning Lab, and there's other opportunities that that the Wallace Center and the FSLN can provide, where we can take advantage of those. But this community of practice is another great model for that. So I know I've got some things I want to talk more with Taylor and Riri about, and we've got 5 breakout groups we're going to jump into here, where you'll have an opportunity to hear a little bit more about what those opportunities are for the learnings around equity-driven and community-led programming by the Learning Lab participants, but also to be an opportunity for you all in these smaller groups to have some discussion, share some of your successes where you're working on equity-driven work in your programming, or questions you have, and maybe some of the challenges. And then we're going to come back after about 15 minutes, talk about what we've learned a little bit, and see how we can start applying those in our models. So without further ado, Andrew's going to drop us all in. And when you get in there, you're going to have one Learning Lab advisor or a team member and sometimes both in each of your groups. They're going to share for a few minutes about their experience if you haven't heard it already. And then it'll be a time for discussion, questions, and sharing. And we'll give you a 2-minute warning before we're done here, but we're going to run for 15 minutes. So Andrew, you want to drop us into the so I want to invite that conversation to continue. Some people were sharing. I know in my group we had Alex was just in the middle of sharing some things. So we're gonna take this time, and so the whole group, there was a lot of really good things being said in the smaller groups, and I know some people are sometimes hesitant to speak in a larger group. So I really want to invite people to step into that space. And so what we're going to do here in a moment is we are going to have kind of the facilitator maybe either call out from your group something that you heard, some really positive successes or what was happening, and or calling out on one of the people who was in your group to share something. And so we want to have some time to share a little bit like what people are doing equity driven that's really standing out, or maybe a key challenge they're having. Kate, I see you have your hand up. Do you want to ask something or share something to start with?
No, I think I hit that by mistake.
Okay.
I apologize. I'm getting a glass of water.
Fair enough. So I'm gonna ask Paku if that's all right, because I know I was in your group to maybe share a little bit of the highlight or call on somebody who was in your group to share with the larger group something you heard or you didn't get enough time to hear, but you know is out there.
Sure. Let me give some highlights, and then I'd love to invite folks from our breakout session to share, especially folks who didn't get a chance to share in our session. So some of the high level things I heard was, number one, to try to push for a equity driven, community centered operation or culture. We were hearing that people were really intentional in how they operationalize their programs. We heard how people actually sometimes took money that they were granted and re-granted it to some of the farmers or some of the constituents they were working with. We heard about how they paid farmers fair prices, which is, traditionally has been an oxymoron with the food shelf and food assistant world, right? We also heard about how we heard one of the tensions is that something that's fundamental to being equity driven, community led is that there is a relationship, there's trust among the players, but sometimes there's tension with that model versus more of a governmental model, which is really, or any type of model that's really rooted in accountability. And so without trust and, here's trust, here's accountability, and there seems to be a lot of tension. And so that's a challenge to trying to implement this model. But other folks, Avi, and I know, I'm trying to find other people who were in our group. Anybody else from our group that want to share or add on to some of those comments?
I just would thank you, Paku. I just would like to elevate Alex. I know you were in the middle of your conversation, but and I know that state agencies can't necessarily intentionally purchase from BIPOC organizations, but that they have to purchase from socially disadvantaged. But what I really appreciated that you shared was that you took this money and dissected it among several organizations. And in your first year, food banks weren't even on that list. And I would love to hear more about that and have you share with the whole group, if that's okay.
Sure, thanks. So hi everybody, my name is Alex and I work for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. I will share a link to our list of program awardees in the chat in just a second. But yeah, one of the things that I talked about, Paku was able to summarize that along with a lot of the other discussion that happened. But Minnesota has implemented LFPA in a pretty different way than a lot of other states, in that we issued an open call for project proposals with pretty much, there's some money that the state is holding on to for admin purposes, but most of our LFPA money is being redistributed out through an open call. We're kind of closing out round 2, or like in the process of reviewing applications for round 2. But what that means is that our round 1 grantees, which are listed on the website that I just linked to, are 33 different organizations from all over the state, which, as Dion was mentioning, doesn't to date include actually any major food banks in our state. It does include some food shelves, but there's just a lot of like really kind of more organic methods for food or projects basically for food procurement and food distribution. And as I was saying, there's a lot of challenges with that, like particularly with what Paku was saying about just that tension between accountability and trust, and just kind of helping shepherd these projects through that work. But yeah, that's Minnesota.
Great. Do people, maybe I'll jump to Allison. Allison, from your group, was there some highlights or other people in your group that you wanted to call out to share something that about either a challenge or success that people are having doing equity-driven, community-driven work?
Yeah, thank you. Miles, there are a couple of things that I wanted to lift up. One was he's no longer on the call. He had to go and actually purchase food at an auction. But Shane was talking about in rural Southeast Ohio that there's less than 0.7% BIPOC farmers in the state. And so he's bringing a lot of intentionality and energy, it seems, to identifying those farmers and having to, instead of saying, okay, 50% of our farmers are going to be BIPOC, we're going to do what we can, and we're going to begin sort of incrementally working through relationship building, working towards that, which was super interesting. And then Maria from the USDA was talking about technical assistance for I guess mid-tier agriculture, particularly technical assistance specifically for BIPOC farmers, and working on identifying, I think, and Maria, you should jump in, cultural competencies for this work, which I would love to hear more about. And then finally, I'll just say that the Forrest, I believe, from Wisconsin was talking about language support, particularly among the Hmong population, and how time consuming and even expensive it is, but that it's so incredibly important in creating programs that that have equity at the center. But Maria, I think folks might be interested in hearing a little bit about the technical assistance for BIPOC farmers that are moving from direct market to more wholesale.
Was there somebody you wanted to call out for that, or just you saying?
Yes, Maria. Yeah, Maria.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to share out right now. We are a research project that's working on looking at what the core competencies are. And we're not using the term BIPOC. We're specifically focused on Black, Hispanic, and tribal producers more narrowly, and identifying the core competencies that are different than the general wholesale scaling competencies in training, education, and technical assistance. But we are only, a quarter of the way into a 24-month project, but the output would be resources of technical assistance. We hope probably to present at one of these community of practice when we have the resource available, and sort of the audience is anyone doing advocacy and technical assistance with Black, Hispanic, and tribal producers who desire to scale into wholesale institutional food assistance sales. And it would help, the resource would be to help the technical assistance providers reach those core competencies when building education and technical assistance.
Great, sounds like a great resource. And Susan and Andrew, you're connected, right? You all can do that with her, so that would be great to make sure that does get out when that comes. That's a great. Erin, is there anything from your group one key success or highlight or example or key challenge that you've had in your discussion group?
It went right to the money, believe it or not, in a call like this. So as we work with certain institutional organizations, particularly governments, how do you structure the work such that you can get money to farmers faster? So we were talking about how that's a common challenge, and then a couple of examples of folks that are doing some amazing work breaking down that barrier. So for instance, the folks at OKC Food Hub put in a 7-day payment to their farmers and are living that. Every week they're doing work. So find Ton and Jenna if you want to learn about that. Dion and her crew have scaled up to the point where they can take whatever market their farms need and then find a place for that food at a price that works for the farmers. So that's another example I would highly recommend you look at. We talked about Taylor, who just says enough with the bureaucracy, connect the people and let them do the work. So you don't even need to go through those traditional channels. And then last month in this call, Hailey Johnson from Common Market talked about putting these corporations on the line who say, hey, we want to do good work in this space. And he said, okay, then come up with some next to zero cost funding so that we can finance the buyer and the selling and make sure all this food gets to the place it needs to go, and the people who are producing it get paid a way that they can continue on sustainably and grow their business to come back and do it again next year. Great.
Thank you, Erin. Myra, what was a top example or top issue of equity-centered, community-driven in your discussion group?
Well, when we talk about, thank you, Miles, first of all. When we talked about community-driven, we first look at what is it that the community needs, and that would take listening to your community and making sure that you understand the problems before providing all the solutions. And I offer that sometimes we live in a world we are so resolution driven. We're ready to come with answers without fully understanding problems. So it's really important. One of the big things that we took away from this conversation is to listen, and listen. And also keep in sight of your vision and mission. Why are you doing this work? and who's benefited from this work. And one of the things that came up is really being conscious of language barriers and language justice. And I want to just lift up Riri in talking about how difficult that work is. And it needs a lot of leadership, resources, funding, and determination to really make a difference and break down some of those barriers when it comes to.
I think we lost Myra there. Wasn't sure if it was me or her. So we'll hopefully she can jump back on here. Susan and OKC Food Hub, do you want to share key learning while we wait and see what happens with Myra?
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of the similar themes that were coming up in some of these other conversations for sure. I think, one of the first themes was just around intentionality and how we have to slow down enough to be able to think through the implications of different decisions, and who needs to be giving input on which questions. And so just naming the challenge of this as an ongoing practice, that equity is not just something that you check in on every once in a while. It's literally every step of the way, and that we've learned certain practices, or we've been handed down certain ways of doing things and assumptions, or a dominant norm that is the way you're supposed to do business, that we all collectively and individually are having to unlearn and do business in a different way that centers relationships. So we also talked a lot about the importance of relationships, and that we're all collectively learning how to build trusting relationships. And that there's a lot of reason why people don't have trusting relationships, because people have been harmed. So, that the time aspect of this is something that I think we can't underestimate. We also talked about the importance of definitions, the challenges around broad definitions like socially disadvantaged, broad definitions like historically underinvested. The lack of specificity in those definitions makes decision-making really tough at the state level, at the local level. And so understanding how to allocate resources in the most intentional way, in the most equity-centered way, when we don't have clear lines around definitions, that's a real pain point and a challenge. And I think that's especially true with LFPA in naming socially disadvantaged as the the priority of producer, without real clarity on who are we really talking about here. And then also, I think another theme that came out was just when we say community driven, you have to be, again, very clear about who you mean by community. In the case of OKC Food Hub, community is the farmers that they're serving. And so being community driven means that the farmers are involved in decision making, and the transparency with farmers of sharing what's the challenges that they're facing, and involving the farmers and solving for those challenges. So I think that sometimes community, I think Kate said this, a community can be a very blurry word, and so getting, again, precise in our terminology is a really important practice in centering equity in our work. And encourage other folks from our group to please chime in if I missed something really important there.
Susan, I would add that we also talked about the importance of relationships. And in fact, for me, the cohort allowed me to have a deeper understanding that building relationships is where I find hope for the future, and that there is hope that change can happen to create a better food system, a better world that we want, and not be stuck in accepting the dissonance that we see in the realities of increasing poverty along the increase in wealth creation for a small part of our communities, but everybody else, not the same picture, right? So
Great. Thank you all for sharing out those highlights. And what I think is really great when I think about, we all get so busy in our day-to-day work. And what I'm hearing from not only all the members of the community of practice when we come together, but from the Learning Lab, is when we create those intentional spaces for really listening, to whatever our communities are. If it's this, our colleagues and our professional communities, or the members we identify, we have that opportunity to really start thinking deeply about these and making sure that our objectives are aligned and we're not just quickly chasing the day-to-day. Even though we have our work, we can think deeply and form better models for the future. So I'm really excited to see what's come of this. And we only have about 8 minutes left, and I would like to take about 5 minutes. I know we already heard from Riri and Taylor about some of their learnings, like their one takeaway, a key piece. I know we'd ask kind of the Learning Lab members that were in the group to just go around and maybe share kind of a key takeaway that you had from as a result of being in this around farm to food assistance. What's been most valuable, advice you might have for other folks working in this work. What are you doing differently? Something along those lines. So it's just a quick 1 or 2 sentences. And maybe, Susan, can I ask you to call out the folks to do that so we can keep this moving?
Sure, they're getting real used to me calling them out. Let's hear from, is M. Sadokowski still here from Metro Caring? I'd love to hear from you, M.
Yeah, I'm still here. Thanks.
Hey.
I was hoping I'd be first. I would say that one of the really interesting conversations, or like I don't know, that's the key takeaway because it's not a thing that we didn't know going in, but the cohort and the folks that I was learning alongside were really good about forcing the conversation around how we leverage volunteers and how we rely on free labor as a part of our work. So who gets the volunteer and like that invisible amount of work and money, I guess, that's like hidden in that as part of being an anti-hunger organization. So that's definitely a piece that I think we're bringing forward and thinking more critically around, like, how do we transition a model fully into an equity-centered and community-driven one when we're so reliant still on that traditional volunteer model.
Great, thanks, Em. Great, somebody else who can just kind of be that key couple of sentences. Susan, you want to shout at the next person?
Yeah, let's hear from Dion.
Wonderful. I was taking some notes, just finished. I would say these 3 things: centering farmers, listening to the community, that's purchasers and farmers. Sometimes food banks have a certain way, sometimes schools have a certain way, institutions. And then finally, identifying our new and upcoming young BIPOC farmers. I didn't even think about that until we had our learning lab in person. It was one of the things written down and at the hotel we were at, and I just couldn't believe that I missed that part. So just very, very grateful for that. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Dion.
Awesome. I think Sophia is here. Sophia?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, and I'm sort of sad that we're coming to an end of this this whole regular gathering, and I'm thinking about ways how we can still visit and see each other, and it was just a very powerful experience in November to meet in person and learn so many things from everybody. For me, probably the greatest aha moment is our collective strength and how many of us are out there. Because as we are working, sometimes it can feel like we are treading water, and that it's still a lot of stuff that we've been talking about and thinking about are not really important in the eyes of a lot of folks. But no, we are a lot of voices, and collectively we are loud. And I think that there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope. We have a lot of work ahead, and we talked about that at every meeting and in person too. It's sometimes overwhelming even. It's just a lot. The whole, and it's not just the food system, because what we talked about too, how it's a net and each dot is connected to the other. The food system is broken, but the education system is broken. The healthcare system is broken. The transportation system is broken. Our commerce system is broken. There is a need for language justice, for all human rights. We have housing system that's broken. All of it. And yet, as we start to tackle one area, it's just sort of like helps solving the other two, and we are a lot. We are a lot more strong, and we are doing it.
Great, thank you. I think you bring the idea of why we do systems work. One piece attaches to the next. We only have a couple more minutes, so Susan, how many more folks do we have? And if they can just hit maybe a one or two liner.
Yeah, I guess I want to see, like, does anybody want to hit? Anybody want to share? Even the advisors, just a couple last words of closure and maybe words of affirmation or encouragement. Allison, I see you're on mute.
Oh, I didn't mean to unmute. No. Yeah, well, all I can say is that as an advisor, I have learned just as much as anyone else and what they've expressed, and it's and I really think that's at the core, right? It's the core of this community of practice is this shared learning, the nuggets of wisdom and information and ideas that can percolate in this kind of a setting, and to do it in a smaller group like that was there were moments of magic, and I'm super appreciative, and I'm hopeful that we'll all just keep finding those moments of magic and really transform this food system.
Right. Susan, thank you, Allison. Susan, you want to kind of just sum up the Learning Lab and talk about the report real quickly, and then we'll close out.
Sure. I just want to express so much deep gratitude to the teams who spent so much time of their very busy farm to food assistants lives with us within this cohort, and for just being so generous with their knowledge and the challenges that they're facing and the vulnerability that they shared within the space was remarkable. And I think we heard that really clear from Taylor and Riri at the top of this call, of just like how having spaces for connection, vulnerability, sharing is so important. And that is what the Food Systems Leadership Network is all about. That is why we hold these spaces. It's why we do these cohorts, and we'll continue doing this work. And I just want to encourage all to keep coming to this community of practice. Next month, I guess I'll just kind of like share sort of in process what's happening here is that all of that like knowledge that's been generated through the Learning Lab is being channeled into a final report that we'll be publishing in like September, October of this year. And our colleagues that are on the call, Allison Cohen, who's one of the advisors for the lab, and Rachel Danifer, they're both based in New York. These are our research partners, and they'll be presenting some of the key findings from all of this research that we've been doing at our next community of practice call. So the Farm to Food Assistance Community of Practice call in July is going to be sharing back those research findings and vetting them with you, saying, is this right? Have we hit it? What are we missing? What else needs to come into this picture? And what are your recommendations? We're really like drawing the information from these calls, from the cohort, from the research that we've done in the National Farm to Food Assistance Survey that we did a year and a half or 2 years ago. All that's getting compiled into this final report. And we want to test, basically, ground truth, some of the information that's coming out of that with this community of practice. So please come next month for that conversation. And yeah, I think that's our next two calls, July 11th and August 8th. And Miles and Jen, you want to wrap us up?
I think you just did, Susan.
I did it.
We're a minute over, so I want to send everyone on their way and just reflect on, this is, such a great reminder that it's important to increase our capacity for listening to others and building relationships, because that's the pathway to unlearning all of these systems that are working against us. So if we can create new ones that are for us. So have a wonderful, wonderful day, everyone. And we hope to see you on July 11th. Take care.
Keep reaching out to each other. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.